Is that right? That was 12:02. Your computer's off.
Here, let's get this under here. Can you lift up? Hello, everyone, and welcome today to the Pierre O'Connor online training session. As you can see, we are sharing our webcam, and please note that your lines are muted, and you have a chat box on the screen today. Type your questions there on the right side of your screen during the webinar, and they will be answered at the end. And we'll also be sharing information about how to set up a free consult at the end of this webinar. And after the webinar ends and Webinar Jam is closed, please complete our short survey. If you have any questions or technical problems, email me, Beth Wertman, at bwertman188@gmail.com. And now I'd like to introduce Lou Pirro, Principal of Pierre O'Connor and Associates. Hi, Lou.
Hello, Beth. Hello, everyone. Welcome to webinar or online training session number 3. And today we're going to be talking about Medicaid and Medicaid planning. So if you missed the first two, the first session was back February 15th, which was basic estate planning, the nuts and bolts of estate planning, which was discussing a will, power of attorney, a healthcare proxy, and a disposition of remains appointment. Session 2 took it to the next level and talked about trusts, revocable trusts and irrevocable trusts. And session 3 today is going to talk about Medicaid. If you haven't seen sessions 1 and 2 and you would like to, you can go to our website, pierolaw.com/events, and you can view all of our past online training sessions, including the 2 that were just done. And you'll be able to see this one or tell friends about it once we are done today, because that will be posted as well. So Medicaid, what is it? How does it work? What are the implications? Why is it important? And a lot of people think, well, Medicaid, I'll never need that. And the truth is, you don't need Medicaid until you do. And because of the way our system is created, Medicaid is seen as the payor of last resort for care. What does that mean? That means that in order to qualify for Medicaid, you have to exhaust other resources. And many people believe, and I just had Beth Finkel, who's the statewide director of AARP, on our Life Happens radio show, which airs every Saturday at 11 o'clock on WGY. And Beth was talking about a survey that AARP just completed, talking about what do people think in terms of long-term care. And one of the striking statistics that comes out of those surveys every year is how many people believe that Medicare is going to pay for long-term care. Medicare and Medicaid are woefully named because they both came into the law in 1965 as President Lyndon Johnson enacted his Great Society program. Medicare at the time was said to be the program that would take all the worries of health care away from seniors for their lifetimes. Well, lifetimes in 1965 were a little bit shorter than they are today. The cost of care was much less than it is today. And consequently, Medicare has not been able to keep pace with the escalating needs and costs of care that fall outside of acute care. So Medicare covers hospitals, it covers doctors, but when you need services in your home or a nursing home or assisted living, Medicare does not cover those types of things. And so then we look at what does cover them. If you're lucky enough to have an insurance policy, that's great. We'll talk a little bit about that later in the program. But if you don't, then Medicaid is going to be the only way that you're going to get payment for the cost of home health care and nursing home care. We're going to talk about both of those today. Nursing homes in our area are now running $140,000 to $150,000 per year. Home health care, although you may think it's free or it's going to be provided much less expensively, if you need formal care 24/7, it could actually be more expensive than that $150,000 nursing home bill. So Medicaid is a program that does solve some of these problems. It does pay for home health care. It does pay for nursing home care, but it is a means tested program. And what that means is that Medicaid requires you to have certain asset and income levels that are very, very low, and we'll talk about those in just a moment, in order to qualify. There are also restrictions on being able to give things away and qualify for Medicaid. So you'll see on your screen there a 5-year look back for Medicaid that applies to nursing home care. And what many people don't understand, and some don't even believe, but one of your nuggets from today is that that look back period, that waiting period to qualify for Medicaid, which is 5 years for some cases, does not apply to home care. So we're going to talk about the differences and distinctions between qualifying for nursing home Medicaid versus qualifying for Medicaid home care. And in our practice, our law firm at Pierre O'Connor & Associates, we do a lot of work with Medicaid and Medicaid planning. We do the applications. We put all of the plans together and execute them right through to getting the care in the home and helping to manage that care, which is now run through agencies called managed long-term care companies. So with that, I'd like to turn it over for the next few slides to one of my colleagues here at the law firm, the attorney that does our Medicaid planning and applications, Frank Hemming. And the photo you see there, although that's not Frank, is a replica of Frank's office. So with that, Frank.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for letting me join you this morning. As Lou said, that's not me in that picture, although I don't know why he didn't have me sit in for that picture, because, I mean, I'll own that. My office does look pretty similar to that. And whenever you hear Medicaid, people think paperwork. So unfortunately, if there's one thing that I'm going to tell you today, is a lot of that's true. There's a lot of paperwork that comes with applying and getting approved. And that's one of the things that we at the firm here can help you with, is getting those documents together, helping you manage it in such a way that way when we send everything to the local Department of Social Services, they know what it is, and B, they can easily get through it. So like Lou said, to qualify for Medicaid, it's our job for you to not necessarily be poor, but to look poor. So with that comes a whole group of assets that you're allowed to keep in your own name and still qualify for Medicaid. And we're talking whether that's nursing home or home care. So what are some of those things? For one thing, you can always have some money in your bank account. There's not a lot of money. So as you can see on your screen, the individual allowance for resources, so that's money typically, is $15,150 per person. So if you're a single person applying for Medicaid, either at home or in the nursing home, you can have roughly $15,000 worth of assets to your name. That also includes some of the things on the slide listed below that. So your home, as long as you or a spouse lives in it, is exempt up to about $158,000. $858, I'm sorry, of assets of equity within your house. So many people here in the Capital District, where our main office is, there aren't a lot of homes that are worth that much. Every once in a while, we get a client that does have very valuable property, but for the most part, your home is going to be exempt as long as you or a spouse lives in it. That's even if one spouse goes to the nursing home. The problems with home typically come into if there's only one spouse left alive, or if both spouses have to go to the nursing home. You can have a car, and that's regardless of value. So whether you have the junker or the Porsche, you can have one car to your name and still qualify for Medicaid. And that doesn't mean that you actually have to be even driving it. So you can be in the nursing home, never be driving your car. You can still have it, and it doesn't count towards the amount of money you can have in your name. You can have a prepaid burial or funeral arrangement as long as it's irrevocable. Now, every once in a while, we'll have clients that come in and they've already done planning, but it's a revocable arrangement, meaning they can call the funeral home and get that money back. Typically, we just call the funeral home and they have you do a signed letter or something just saying you want to change that, and it becomes irrevocable, and it's no problem for Medicaid. If you haven't prepaid your burial when you come to see us, that's typically one of the planning strategies that we can use to help bring your money down a little bit. So we always want to talk to clients about that, and you're always allowed to prepay your burial. You can have income producing property. So if you have an active business, as long as it's active and currently operating as a business, the asset of the business or the assets of the business are exempt. We don't see that a ton in our practice, but every once in a while we will get something with that, with somebody who has a concern like that. Life insurance. Sometimes people don't always think about life insurance. when it comes to life insurance, the important values you always have to keep in mind are your face value and your cash value. So when you have a life insurance policy, you have to look first at the face value. When you have a face value on your whole life policy, if it's less than $1,500, regardless of the amount of cash value, it's exempt. The way that, or the where this number came from, as Lou would say, came from in the 50s and 60s when Medicaid was established. It took about $1,500 to bury you. So that number hasn't been updated since that time. So Medicaid will still allow you to have a life insurance policy in your own name with a face value of up to $1,500. If it's worth more than that, which most policies are, then the cash value of that policy actually counts toward the amount of money in your name. So if you've got a life insurance policy worth $5,000 face value, $5,000 cash value, that means you can have roughly $10,000 of other of non-exempt assets to your name and still qualify for Medicaid. Last thing we like to talk to clients about, and this is one of the most important things that we talk about with clients, are your retirement accounts. So you have a retirement account, whether that's an IRA, 401k, 403b, anything like that, as long as it's in payment status, meaning that you're taking distributions from it every year, the body of the account is exempt. The income from it is not, but the body of the account is. Roths, we're starting to see more and more because people like the advantage of being able to withdraw money tax-free from it. Roths, generally, as long as we set up a monthly payment from it, that typically will exempt the account. It all depends on how much money is in the account, what county you're working with. So unfortunately, the law isn't settled on Roths, but we so far have not had any counties giving us a hard time of exempting those accounts as long as we set up the distribution. So with that, I'm going to throw it back to Lou.
So as you can tell, Medicaid has a lot of rules, and the rules of Medicaid can be very complex. So we have put together a guide, and the Medicaid guide from our firm is updated through 2018. You can download it off of our website, pirolaw.com, in the resources page, or we can actually send it to you by email or by mail. And if you want to email Beth, who you had on the initial slide, and email at her email here, bwortman@pirolaw.com, she will actually be able to send you the guide, and that has all of those wonderful details that Frank just mentioned. The bottom line is Medicaid is a means-tested program that requires you to either, as Frank said, and says, don't tell the state we do this, you either have to be poor or look poor in order to qualify for Medicaid. And so when we say look poor, what do we mean? And before I get to that, we believe very strongly that the best way to pay for long-term care, services in your home, services in assisted living, or ultimately a nursing home, is to insure the risk. And we think long-term care insurance and new life insurance products that have benefits for long-term care are absolutely the way to go. And I've been saying this for many, many years because I've been following Medicaid for 35 years since I started practice, and it has changed dramatically. What do we think Medicaid is going to look like 10, 20, 30 years from now as the number of seniors expands, the cost of care expands, and budgets are strained with regard to Medicaid financing of long-term care? You will hear something federally, and we explore this and follow it very closely, called block grants, which is going to be the federal government's solution to capping their Medicaid expenditures, because Medicaid has the honor of being a state and federal program. Half the money basically comes from the federal government. And in New York, half the money comes from state and local government. The counties actually have a share of Medicaid as well. So financing long-term care, if you have the opportunity to buy insurance, and I know there are some issues with long-term care insurance, we can talk to you about that at a consultation if you'd like to get a consultation to go through the options of financing. But if you can get insurance and afford it, it is by far the best option, especially if you're in your 50s and 60s. As you get into your 70s, 80s, it's much harder to get and much more expensive. But don't discount long-term care insurance. I just want to put that out there, that if you can get the insurance, it's a much better option for you at the point in time when you need care. But if you want to protect assets, the primary way in our office, and I've been doing these trusts again for 30 years, that we use to make you look poor, if you will, and have assets sheltered and yet still have some access and availability, is a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. This manages assets. It has tax planning involved in it, so it's favorable from a tax perspective. We can protect assets from Medicaid creditors, and if you do it right, it can also avoid probate, which we talked about a great deal in our last session, dealing with both revocable and irrevocable trusts. You need to know that if you have a revocable trust, it will avoid probate, but it will not protect assets for Medicaid purposes. So this has to be an asset protection trust that is irrevocable. Irrevocable meaning you can't break it, although as you're going to see, that you can keep some strings over it that gives you significant controls, even though it lists itself as irrevocable. So the trustee, who can be the trustee of your Medicaid Asset Protection Trust? We do not recommend that the individual who is the grantor or the creator of the trust also serve as trustee. Very often, it's going to be someone who is a child or a close relative, should not be a spouse or yourself. And we met with a gentleman this morning who has a friend who is an attorney who he is going to use, doesn't have children, but is going to use a personal attorney as the trustee of that trust. And there's some things we can do to put additional controls in. The beneficiaries of the trust, and a trust, again, is a legal relationship between a grantor, you create the trust, a trustee who manages, and beneficiaries who receive the benefits of the income and assets. And in a Medicaid trust, typically the benefits are split. You have an income beneficiary, which is you. You put the money in and you can keep your dividends and interest from it, and a principal beneficiary. So the principal beneficiary cannot be you. We cannot have assets come back to the grantor. So typically in a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, you keep the income, but you don't have a right to get the principal back directly. You'll see the last bullet there. Transfers of principal can be made to your children. So you can have assets pass from the trust to the kids. Let's say you wanted to go buy a new car and you didn't have the funds outside the trust that you needed or wanted to use to buy the car. You could have the trust transfer $30,000 to your children, who could then use it for anything they like, but hopefully they would use it to buy that car. So that's a way that we can actually get principal out of the trust as needed. What types of assets do you put into your Medicaid Asset Protection Trust? Your home, bank account, stocks, bonds, annuities, life insurance policies. As Frank said, if you have cash value life insurance, it's not going to work because you can only have death benefit up to $1,500. So the cash value of life insurance counts against you. Business interests, other real estate interests in addition to the home, all fit neatly inside the trust. Again, you keep the income. Principal cannot be given back directly, but can be given out to third parties such as your children. What do you keep out of the trust? You keep a certain amount of cash, at least that $15,000 that Frank mentioned, and you have that money at your disposal. Very often we keep more than that so that you have a comfort level. So when you create this trust, certain amount of assets go in the trust, but you're going to keep some things outside so that you have access to ready cash. And remember, the second major nugget, in addition to no transfer penalties for home care, is that IRAs are exempt if in payment status. So that's a major asset for many people. And so we have the ability to do the planning, keep the IRAs and a certain amount of cash outside, and then have the other assets protected inside the trust. And this starts your 5-year look-back clock ticking. And the controls that you can keep, you can always change the trustee. So if you appoint someone, you can fire them. You're fired. And you can have them then be replaced by anybody that you choose. You can also change beneficiaries. And if you think about it, if you have kids, and I have 3, what would be more important to them, not serving as trustee or not being a beneficiary? So you can also remove the beneficiaries and you have significant leverage over the trust. And that trust is what we use to protect assets and qualify you for Medicaid. So I'm going to turn it back over to Frank, who's going to talk a little bit about the Medicaid rules and the spend down.
Thanks, Lou. So do you have to spend down all your assets? No. If you fund a trust, no, you don't. If you do have money that you can spend, what can you spend it on? So you can do things like home repairs, car repairs. You can buy a car. We've had people do that. You can prepay your burial like we talked about. And because lawyers design the law, you can pay your legal fees because we want to make sure our payments are good too. Your non-exempt assets are everything else. So whenever Medicaid is in the picture and you're thinking about moving money around, you should seek counsel of how to best do that. That's whether funding your trust or giving your money away or spending it. So if we're talking about the nursing home, like Lou said, you have to think about the 5-year penalty period. So people ask all the time, well, when does that start? How does it work? So if you're talking about going to the nursing home, 3 factors have to be met in order for your penalty period to even start running in the first place. One is you have to be in the nursing home. So every once in a while, we'll get people that come in and say, well, I made that gift a while ago. That's almost done, right? Well, it kind of depends. Are you in a nursing home? Because if you're not, technically your penalty is not running yet. You have to be otherwise eligible, meaning that you have to have that $15,000 or less to your name. So again, if you have a pile of money in your name, then your penalty is not even running yet. And the third thing is that you have to actually have a filed Medicaid application with your local county Department of Social Service. So until all 3 of those things have happened, your penalty is not running. Seek counsel if you have questions about that. So quickly, how would a penalty period example in real life work? So let's just say over the past few years, you gave away your house and some cash to your kids. So if you gave away $257,000, what we do is we take that number, the number of assets you've transferred, and you divide it by what's called the Medicaid regional rate for the part of New York State where you live. Now in Albany, our number, and this is just the number the state comes up with every year, is 10,719. So if you take 257,000 divided by 10,719, you have a 24-month penalty period waiting for you if you don't do other planning. So make a long story short, you give away a lot of stuff, you might have a long period of Medicaid ineligibility because you gave stuff away. Back to Lou.
So what does that all mean? You have 2 different distinct periods. Most people have heard of the 5-year look back, but within the 5-year look back, there's a second calculation that Frank just described where you calculate a number of months of ineligibility. And so when we sit down with clients, we look at what they have and what stage they're at. If you're doing advanced planning and you can do the trust and start that 5-year clock ticking, at the end of 5 years, that trust is fully mature and the assets are gone. But if you need care within that 5-year time period, then all of these transfers are going to have to be calculated back into the equation. And there are still things that we can do, Frank, and Frank does things called promissory notes and wonderful techniques that you can still save about half the assets, even at the time of entry into the nursing home. And we have clients that come in that have already spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and have some money left and want to save it. You can even do it at that late hour. But the sooner you get out in front of this, if you can beat that 5-year clock for nursing home care, then you're in better shape. But remember, home care does not have the same rules. For home care in New York, which is a very rich program, you can qualify without a look back period. You can transfer assets literally today and be eligible on the 1st of April. No fools, no fooling. So that works every month. So you can give away assets, create that trust, fund the trust, and qualify for Medicaid home care without look back and without penalty. There are multiple programs, and we can get, although it's not guaranteed, but it is possible to get 24/7 care in home through Medicaid home care. There is a myriad of programs that are under the Medicaid home care umbrella in New York State. Navigating them takes some nuanced knowledge. And so in our office, we do a lot of work figuring out what's the best program. Is it the consumer-directed program or a waivered services program or the personal care aid program? You don't really know that until you know all of the facts regarding your personal situation. So in addition to financial eligibility, we have to look at what programs are going to be best suited for you. And part of this is looking at what resources you have available to you. Do you have children who are part of the care plan? Do you want them to be paid caregivers? Believe it or not, New York Medicaid will pay your own children to be caregivers under the consumer-directed program. A lot of knowledge, a lot of in-depth knowledge is needed to really make this fit your personal situation. If you have income and assets that you want to get to children, you can use something called a caregiver agreement, and you can transfer income and assets to kids and do it under a contract that allows it to be a legitimate expense for Medicaid purposes. And kids very often are the ones bearing the brunt. So how does home care work and how quickly can you get eligible? Frank, in 60 seconds, take them through this example.
Sure. So let's talk about John. John's got some income, Social Security and a pension, total $23.62 a month, and he's got some assets. He's got his IRA, he's got his bank accounts for $25,000, stock for $100,000. He's got his house. That's what John has. So that's when he comes in. That's what he's got. Hold on. Can we go back?
I got you.
A second?
I don't know.
Hold on. Let's go back. One.
There we go.
There we go. All right. Okay. So if John's got those, then what happens is he creates a Medicaid asset protection trust, just like Lou said. He throws in everything with his house. He throws in all his stock, and he throws in some cash. We create an income trust called a pooled trust, where some of his excess income goes. So under Medicaid, he can keep $862 of income. Everything above that goes to his pooled trust, and then he applies for Medicaid. At that point, what does he have? He's got $14,000. All the rest of the cash is in the trust. House is in the trust. Stock is in the trust. He's got his income down to $862 because everything goes to a pooled trust. And he applies for Medicaid as of April 1st, and off he goes. There you go. 60 seconds.
That's pretty good. 60 seconds or less. So it doesn't all happen that quickly in the real world. But truly, Frank and I have done work with clients where we've gotten them Medicaid qualified in a matter of 5 hours. They came in on the last day of the month and were able to transfer assets on that day. They were mostly bank accounts, and be eligible the next day for Medicaid home care. And it really works that quickly. There is no waiting period. But that's not the end of the story, because Medicaid home care is complex. As I said, there are many programs. So in our practice, one of the things that we've done is incorporated care management. A licensed master's in social work, Susan Vale, is our care manager. And Susan goes out to homes and works with families on how to coordinate the care, put the plan together, and then informs Frank and I on what the legal and financial needs are and how we can fit the legal and financial plan around the family, because it's all about you. It's all about what your needs are and what you have in resources available to you, both financial resources, income and assets, but also human resources. Who are going to be your caregivers? Who are going to be the responsible people providing the services from a family perspective? All of that goes into the equation. This new company that we have started, Everhome Care Advisors, puts all of this together for you and helps you through this maze of very complex laws and complex decisions with regard to care in home especially. So we have an ability to put this plan together and to help you navigate this. Because when you apply for Medicaid home care, the services don't turn on right away. So you need a plan to get through this maze of applications. And we help our clients. We walk them through both the financial application, which Frank prepares and files, the application for a pooled trust, which helps shelter income, which requires a disability determination. Then a company called Maximus comes out to see you and does a full assessment, 2 to 3 hours, to determine whether you're eligible for long-term care. And then you get a managed long-term care company that comes out and does another assessment that actually awards the hours for care. So the financial piece used to be most of the application, but today I'd say it's about a 50-50 mix between the financial and the actual accessing care and getting the number of hours that you're entitled to, which we work with our clients on every day. And boy, having Everhome and a care manager as part of that mix helps us tremendously. So if you're interested in more detailed information on that concept, on having a care manager, getting an in-home assessment, knowing how you can make your home your castle and make it a fortress for healthcare and long-term care, and get Medicaid to help you pay for it, then you can join us at our seminar, which is coming up. We do these about once a quarter, and this is March 21, which is next Wednesday, and March 22, next Thursday. The 21st is 12:30 p.m. The 22nd is 6 p.m., and they're both right here in the Colony Town Library, the Sanford Colony Town Library, free of charge. We will get in much more depth and detail. So if this whet your appetite, then it worked. And we hope that you can join us on the 21st or 22nd. And we will get into a much more detailed explanation of how the Medicaid rules can work for you, how you can utilize trusts and other planning techniques to help protect and preserve your income and assets, leave a legacy to the next generation while satisfying your own care needs in today's world. So with that, I think we've wrapped our 30-minute seminar and webinar, and the online education program will be continuing. We have an ability to have a free consultation. So if you want to sit down with your own situation, you can just email us or call us at 459-2100, or you can email info@pierrolaw.com. That's info@pierrolaw.com. And we'd be happy to sit down with you. No fee and no obligation. We'll sit down and we'll go through your own situation. And we have a questionnaire that we'll send you that you can use to assemble the information that we need in order to do this consultation, because you might get the feeling that there's some detailed information that's necessary. We need to know income, we need to know assets in order to make this work for you. But we have resources that we will make available to you. And remember, you can always go to our homepage at pierrolaw.com, and you can find the button at the center of the page to sign up for that free consultation. And if you want to see the past webinars or online education events, you can do that there under the Events tab. With that, Beth, do we have any questions?
Not this time.
Hearing none, I make a motion that the meeting be adjourned. So have a wonderful day, and we hope to see you at our next webinar, which will be coming up very shortly. Thanks very much.